and happy Halloween! Welcome to today's Halloween special. Before we begin, I'd like to shout out our spooky outfit competition winners from the Discord. In third, we have Spoopy Yeehaw with the big bad wolf. Then in second, we have Headless Sandman with this amazing OC drawing. And finally, in first, we have Slasher Soap dressed as Lady Dimitrescu. Some of the outfits were also put in today's video. Join the Discord for more friendly competitions and shout-out opportunities. The party was on at Manzanita Post. Hosted on Wednesday the 28th of October, Manzanita turned into a hotspot from 8 till late. But dancing around the campfire wasn't the only activity. They had apple bobbing, spooky trail riding, and animatronics. The only requirement was to book a 50-minute ride slot and come dressed to impress. I went as a killer clown and Kweesy went as a hot witch. I know, we are so original, but hey, I had to buy a wig and everything. I have to say, there was some super impressive outfits, like the host was dressed as the Strange Man. He was quite a funny dude. We also bumped into Flickers, who was dressed also as a witch. She had booked a trail ride slot just after ours. Then there was Lady Dimitrescu and her friend, who I think was some sort of evil spirit lady. Also, we met a guy who was the devil himself, actually a very cool dude. There was a post-apocalyptic butcher, the big bad wolf, and a cowboy. Oh, I almost forgot to talk about the animatronics. They were these huge skeleton things in cages that would occasionally move. They looked super scary. One was a two-headed skeleton, and the other one was meant to be some sort of witch skeleton thing. Here is Kweesy next to one for proportion. And since it was a trail ride, the horses got dressed up too. This is the post-apocalyptic butcher's horse named Reginald, looking like he could survive nuclear fallout. Here is Nikita and Hank. Hank, by the way, is Flickers' horse, and he is going on the ride with nothing but a rope halter, a mask, and a bareback pad. Nikita is also wearing a mask, and it was a bit of a coincidence since both Kweesy and Flickers went dressed as witches too. Also, Nikita was super chill about wearing a mask, whereas Jericho wasn't. I tried to get him to wear a custom clown mask, but he was having none of it, so instead we went for some simple red tack. Also, look at this adorable painted mule. He's dressed up as a zebra. He's so cute, I literally screamed when I saw him. We were also lucky enough to get to take photos with him later on, which you can find on my Instagram. The decorations on this place were insane. It must have taken hours to set up. And it all looks super realistic. At one point, me and Kweesy went off just to sightsee all of the decorations. We had our ride booked for 10:30 p.m. and we were so excited to go. There was word of a few horses bolting and riders coming off on the ride, but we were pretty confident we wouldn't end up on the floor. At 10:30 sharp, we mounted up and got briefed by the host before we left. He gave us the route map and said that we had the unlucky slot since at 10:35 they always heard strange noises coming from the forest. And of course, if we got lost or got in an accident, we would call their number, etc. Me and Kweesy did not buy the whole unlucky slot and weird noises, since he'd actually been saying that to every group that had been going out. Probably just to scare us. So off we set. Jericho seemed a little tense since it was colder than usual, with it being October and 10:30 at night. I knew he just needed a little walk-up warm-up and then he would be good. Also, here was our route. If you find yourself near tall trees at night, I recommend doing this ride if you want to try it out. Now, I have something very special for you. A story that I decided to tell Kweesy while we were on our ride together that definitely freaked us both out. I would use the headcam audio, but it has a pretty bad microphone and we got interrupted a few times with hearing wolves. So if you see us stop or look around nervously, just assume we are super scared of the wolves or possibly someone in the woods. This story is totally yoinked from Mr. Ballon, who is the king of scary stories on YouTube. Let us begin. In the early 2000s, a teenage boy named Eben and his dad would hunt regularly in the state of Georgia. Eben's father knew a very wealthy man who had a private, fenced-off area for hunting. This wealthy landowner offered to let Eben and his dad use the hunting grounds, and the pair were thrilled to accept the offer. Eben was around 14 at the time, and him and his dad were very skilled in hunting and the general outdoors. They woke up early to go drive to this private property that was quite far away from any town. When they arrived at the main and only gate, they had to put in a special code in the keypad to make this gate open. They drove through the gate, shutting it behind them, and it automatically locked. They drove 3 kilometers, or about 2 miles, along this path until they got to the forested area where the path ended. They parked their car, got out all their camping and hunting gear, bearing in mind the sun hasn't risen yet, but it would soon. Whilst the main point of their trips was to hunt, they loved hiking and camping out as well, so they were aiming to spend a few days in this huge forest. But when they walked into this forest, they immediately noticed something was off. It took them a moment, however they soon realized that there was no sounds. No birds, no animals, no wind to make the trees rustle. Nothing. It was dead quiet apart from the sounds of their own footsteps and the occasional clank from the equipment on their backs. The only other sound they heard that wasn't them was a plane passing overhead. Eben's father said he wished he had parked further away because they have clearly scared all the animals when they pulled up in their car and while they were talking while they put their gear on. So now the animals were aware they were here and have scattered. The pair trekked through the woods, trying to be as quiet as possible, knowing that eventually the animals would stop noticing. However, they spent the whole day walking and searching in this forest, and they never saw a single creature. The forest is still deadly quiet. No wind passes through, no branches crack around them, nothing. They eventually got frustrated with this and decided to try and find a campsite to pitch their tent. Eben's father suggests that the animals have moved deeper into the woods for safety and they might find something there. If not, then sleeping in that area would at least be the best chance of seeing animals in the morning. So they hiked for another hour into the forest and finally come to a small clearing that is perfect for the tent. Eben and his dad unpack and set up, but it's still daylight. Eben's dad wanted to go and try and find some animals now that they were deeper into the forest, so they hike a little ways away from the camp and set up a camouflaged blind to sit in and wait. Once again, no animals and no sound. They give up and go back to the campsite. As soon as they were in visual range of the site, Eben notices that their tent had collapsed. Eben's father says, "Oh, the wind's blown our tent over." But Eben corrects that, no, it couldn't have been. There is no wind. We've been saying that all day, and if there had just been a breeze, then we would have had some cover for our sound. Eben's dad asks him, "When you set up the tent, did you not hammer in the pegs enough? Are you sure you slotted the poles together properly?" Eben, being well practiced, said, "No, I've pitched a tent like 1,000 times. I know how to do it properly." When they got to the campsite, they were really confused because the poles had been removed from the corners of the tent. Now, these poles rely on tension, and they don't just randomly pop out and collapse. Either the rods would have to have broken, or someone would have to come and remove them. The tent was in perfect condition. There were no scratch marks and the poles were not broken. Now, knowing this was private property and that they were supposed to be the only ones in the woods, they assumed that something had gone slightly wrong when they set it up and they just hadn't noticed. They convinced themselves that that was what had happened because the alternative was too bizarre and possibly a little frightening to imagine. They set up a campfire after it gets dark, they eat and chat for a little bit, and then they decide to go to bed so that they can get up early in the morning. They get into their sleeping bags and eventually fall asleep. A few hours later, Eben wakes up all of a sudden and is not sure if he's still partially asleep, but he hears faint laughing coming from behind their tent, far off in the woods. Eben turns and sees his dad is still in the tent with him. He tries to clear his head fog from the sleep and listens really carefully. All he can hear is silence, like it was the whole day prior. He doesn't hear laughter, so he assumes he was dreaming it, and after calming down a little more, goes back to sleep. A little while later, Eben wakes up again, but this time he sees his dad is bolt upright and looking around anxiously. Eben asks what's wrong, and his dad immediately goes, "Shh, can you hear that?" And to his horror, he hears the laughter again, but this time it's closer. Eben very quietly tells his dad that he heard the laughing before, but he thought he was dreaming. His dad looks horrified and says that there shouldn't be anyone else in the woods. The owner said no one else had the code for the gate. After confirming their fears, they listen again to the laughing. They hope that whoever or whatever this is won't know that they are there and will just leave. Suddenly, they hear footsteps running towards them from way off into the forest, and since everything else is so quiet, it's really clear to hear. Whatever this is charging towards them. It comes to an abrupt stop right at the edge of their campsite. Eben is gripping his father's arm and his dad has grabbed his rifle and moves into a position to open the tent to confront whatever is out there. Right before he grabs the zipper, the thing begins laughing again. The sound is as clear as day and is right outside their tent. Eben's father takes a quiet, deep breath, grabs the zipper and begins moving it. The sound the zipper made was so loud in what was previously silent, the laughter stops immediately. They wait. They hear no footsteps, so something is probably still out there, but the laughing stops like it recognized that they're making the noise. They're right there. There they are. They're in the tent. Eben's father freezes with his hand on the zipper, debating whether or not to go outside. Before he can make a decision, whatever this is turns and runs full speed back into the woods. For a few minutes, they sit in silence and pray whatever it was is gone and for good. They don't hear anything, no laughing, no running. Eventually, Eben's father rezips the tent, sits back in shock. They stay up all night, barely speaking because whatever it was had heard them when they moved that zipper. They were terrified of making any sounds, even tiny ones like sleeping bag rustling, because it was so quiet that any noise can be heard from very far away. They still don't know what's out there. They wait in silence for the sun to rise. As soon as it did, they shoved everything into their bags and literally ran across the forest back into their car. Later, the owner confirmed that no one had entered before or during the visit, as they had cameras watching the front and only gate. To this day, they don't know who or what that thing was. Spooky, right? Well, I ended up totally regretting telling that story because we were suddenly afraid of everything. Kweesy then pointed out that there were no decorations or jump scares on the ride, so when people had fallen off, it was probably because they had scared themselves and that energy had passed on to the spooky horses. We decided to take a deep breath and calm down a little. Then I remembered I'm literally dressed as a killer clown, so if there was anyone in these woods, they would be more afraid of me than I was of them. Anyhow, the ride was pretty smooth, so here I give you a spooky-inspired montage. Warm yellow lights were in sight. That was an awesome trail ride. It was so atmospheric. It's crazy how they didn't need to add any props to the ride. They just set people's minds up that it was something scary and we imagined the rest. Well, we were both relieved and super pumped after the ride. We wanted to go do some apple bobbing and dance by the fire some more. So that was an awesome way to spend Halloween. How did you guys spend the spooky season? Let me know in the comments below. Also, shout out to my members. Thank you guys ever so much for supporting me and my work. If you guys want to get your names in the credits for a special shout out, check out the YouTube membership via the join button. Have a great Halloween and stay safe, everyone. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay positive and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.